Welcome to another episode of my gun conversion series where I'm trying to turn this here regular Glock 21 into as many different types of guns as I can. I've turned it into a 9, I've turned it into a 10, and today we're going to turn it into a rifle. We're using the Mech Carbine conversion unit. This is a complete upper for the Glock. So you replace the slide and everything in it with this unit. It has its own barrel and recoil system. It's got its own bolt. It's got an adjustable stock. It's really kind of a nice unit here, and it's actually legal. I know a lot of people are going to be asking right now, doesn't this create a National Firearms Act when you convert a pistol into a rifle, then you can't convert it back? There's actually been a ruling issued by the acting director of the ATF to clarify that. I'm going to put the link right here. You can click on it and see, but from my reading and from Mech assurances, it sure sounds like there is absolutely nothing illegal about using a kit like this to convert what was a pistol into a rifle, not into a short-barreled rifle, but into a 16-inch barrel or more rifle, and then back to a pistol. So the conversion is really kind of simple. All you do is pop the slide off, then you install this little Glock block. This is what actually causes the bullet to ride up higher and go into the barrel of the Mech unit. And from that point on, you've got a 10mm rifle. So we're going to test this out with a couple of different types of ammunition. I've done chrono testing from my normal 10mm converted Glock 21 on both the CorBon DPX and also on the Buffalo Bore 180 grain jacketed hollow point. And we're going to then try this out in ballistic gel. I'm going to use genuine organic ballistic gelatin with and without 4 layers of denim. And I'm also going to use a block of clear ballistics to test the Buffalo Bore with. So we're going to go to the range and find out what happens. How much power do you pick up, and how do the bullets perform when you launch 10mm bullets that were designed for a 4.6-inch frame? What happens when you launch them out of a 16-inch carbine rifle? First thing I can say is penetration was kind of fantastic. Over penetration for what I consider home defense use, but I don't really expect you to be using a 10mm carbine for home defense. In any case, the DPXs did penetrate deep. We had the shortest bullet stopped at 20 inches. We had one went to 20 1/4. One went to 22. Couldn't find the fourth one. There's pieces, remnants at 16 inches, and then there's nothing else in the block. So it obviously exited at that point. I can see a little bit of a scratch mark where the side of the bullet would have ripped out. But that's not really the story. The DPX has penetrated deep, yes, but what I want to show you is what else they did to the block. First of all, we have a tremendous amount of broken off fragments and flecks. It looks like the DPX is just kind of, all the petals just kind of broke off as they penetrated, and the initial cavity is kind of tremendous. I could only take 4 shots in the first place because there simply was no more room, no more virgin gel in the block to be able to shoot a 5th shot. This is the bare side. This is the side that I shot into that was the bare bullets. And that's the side that was shot with the denim bullets. Actually, I guess if I turn it this way, you can see both at the same time. Here's a bare and here's a denim. The expansion cavity is kind of tremendous. Let's just get a look at that first. This is the size. Each of these starbursts represents just how much damage each of these 10mm bullets did in the early section. And if we look deeper in, this represents about the 7-inch mark, and still 7 to 8 inches of penetration through gel is about where you're getting to where it could do some serious damage to the vital organs. And the idea that it's doing wounding this big at about 7 inches deep is really impressive, which you'd expect from a powerful 10mm cartridge and a premium DPX loading. And then This section here is about 8 inches in. That's when the bullets are starting to settle down. They're not making the big, gigantic wound cavity, but you can still see it's a big wound cavity. And in the rest of the gel here, we can see this is where the petals really started to flake off. There's all sorts of petals visible. Pull this off and see a few of those embedded petals in there. Those are the petals that are normally expanded out, and they just ripped off of the bullet here. I don't really consider that a bonus. I think that's something that we've been trying to avoid with bullet design, is to have pieces fall off. But I also understand when you're driving a bullet a good 300 feet per second faster than it was probably originally designed to do, this is the kind of thing that will happen. And as a result, we ended up with a large percentage of the petals left behind in the gel. CorBon DPX is from the Mech 16-inch barrel carbine. You know what? Okay, they did get overdriven. They were driven faster than they were designed to withstand. We had all the petals sheared off of this one. We had all but 2 shear off of this one, and we had 2 shear off of this one. So these petals got left behind. They didn't necessarily create additional wounding channels. They just broke off and left. But interesting thing, this copper bullet still maintained a solid chunk of big destruction there towards the end. It's not like, you know, when we have fragmentation happening on a lead bullet, usually the whole thing splinters into just little tiny bits, and we may find just small fragments. But the copper retained its integrity. Even though the petals had fallen off, the copper still created, this is a big, nasty caliber-sized bullet that penetrated very deeply. So I don't think this was an ideal test. Obviously, I prefer that none of the petals had fallen off, but I gotta say, it ain't bad. The outrageous destruction done in the early portion, and the fact that the petals held together until, you know, 10, 11, 12 inches before they started coming off, meant a lot of damage was done when it was fully attached, and then they broke off and gave it even deeper penetration, which, if you're using this against, you know, medium to larger game, you may need and want that extra penetration. So I gotta say, as a personal defense against a human, it would have done the job. And I think it could potentially do the job against even larger games simply because it does hold together. You can see it penetrated to 14¼ inches, which is excellent. There's absolutely nothing to complain about that. But what's kind of interesting is if you look at the beginning of the gel block, it almost looks like a, you know, a G2 Rip or a Liberty or some sort of fragmenting bullet, which it isn't. It's a jacketed hollow point bullet. It should not have fragmented like this. So I think what must have happened is that the bullet was driven over its design limit. Being fired out of the carbine, it probably wasn't expecting to go that fast, and so it did have some fragmentation when it first entered. If you like bullets like the Liberty or the G2 Rip or whatever, hey, you know, here's a bonus. It fragments too. But what really counts is the damage did deep, and it looks like it expanded and it did well. It got shredded, kind of blew up on it. You know, it was weird because normally when I see a bullet that fragments, it fragments all throughout the block generally. But on this one, it sheared off all these pieces pretty much early on and then left this larger chunk to reach out to, you know, the end of travel. Which is okay. I mean, it did okay. It did, like I said, it looked almost like a G2 Rip there with all these little fragments coming off early. I'm not really in favor of that design, so I'm not saying I was impressed by that. I'm just saying that's what it looked like. Overall, I think it's just too much for the bullet. I don't think this is the right type of bullet design to be driven that fast, because the Mech really drove the bullet so much faster than the normal Glock 20 size barrel would do. I think it was just too much for the bullet. But it didn't fail. It got there and it did damage. I just think there's better bullet designs could have perhaps performed better, but You know, I might use these in the Glock 21 converted to 10mm, but I don't know that I would use them in the Mech Tech again because I think they're pushed beyond their design limit. But the fact that they made such a huge thing to go on just this small piece of a Glock is kind of fun. The power increase was massive. Tremendous amount of power added. As such, the bullets, both bullets that I tried were overdriven and came apart. So I don't think that the test results were ideal from what we got. Maybe we need a different kind of ammo that's built to handle the velocities that this could give. But another way to look at it as, if you were using a carbine like this, maybe you're engaging at longer ranges, maybe you're out hunting or something and you're shooting at 50 or 100 yards. When you do that, the additional velocity that this gun gives you is going to taper off at those longer distances. And so the velocity may not be quite as high when it actually hits. So maybe at 100 yards or so, these will be performing like the handgun does at close range or muzzle velocity. So maybe it's an ideal choice. Either way, I was really happy with how the DPXs did it, considering that the pedals broke off, because we still had a very large base. We had great penetration. It was a good performer. Buffalo bore kind of shredded and came apart. I would like to see a hard cast bullet. I think that would be really something. If we had a hard cast buffalo bore, I think you would see a tremendous amount of penetration and some serious hunting power, if not, you know, for personal defense. This would be a serious hunting platform. So overall, I like it. You know, I know you could probably buy a complete carbine for this amount of money or less, but just the sheer fact that you can convert your Glock handgun into it, and this is a different conversion because this is a 45 ACP pistol, but I put the 10mm upper on it. You can get this upper in 45 ACP also. You can choose either, but you can convert your 45 ACP handgun into a 10mm upper by going this way. So overall, it's a good product. I like it, and I like what it did. And if you like what you saw, hit the like button, and be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when my next video is posted.